Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining. Can see our participants coming in. Already 50 people here, and we're expecting a really good turnout. Today has been such a strong interest in the role, so that number is close to 100 now. We'll just let a few more people join us before starting. One thing it would be lovely to hear from everyone in the chat, if you could just drop, first name, let us know where you're tuning in from. Which part of London, northeast, southwest? Are you further afield? I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from and say hello in the chat. It's brilliant to have you all here. Oh, amazing. Got people from Norwich, North London, West London, East London, Manchester. Amazing. So really nice representation from across the UK. Thank you. Lovely. And yeah, we've got over 150 people here today, so that's absolutely fantastic. And thanks everyone for being so punctual and joining us today. It's lovely to see you here virtually. We're specifically here for the Creative Access and British Library training placement to find out more information. I'm Laura, and I'm really excited to be chairing the discussion today. I currently work in the Access team at Creative Access and have been with the organisation for a few years now. Really fortunate to have a fantastic panel joining us. So we've got Jazz Rai, who's the Chief Operating Officer at the British Library, having previously held the role of Director of People. And before the British Library, Jazz worked as Global Head of Talent and Development at Sony in Japan. And Jazz is also a trustee at Ball Place Commonwealth Trust, where she aligns her passion for people and culture. People and nature, sorry. Thank you, Jazz. And we also have Lindsay Douglas, who is the early careers manager at the British Library, creating development pathways for people looking to start their careers in the sector. And Lindsay will be the key contact for the trainees, for example, helping them getting settled at the library. And she's worked at the National History Museum, Royal Museums Greenwich, Claw Leadership and the V&A. But I'll hand over to them to both elaborate on their current roles, what that's involved, and just because it's fascinating to hear how people got to where they are today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jazz Rai. Super excited to be with you here today. Right now, I'm here in my office in St Pancras in London. So hello to all the London people. I actually live in Maidstone in Kent. And as Laura said, I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at the British Library. And that means I'm responsible really for the running of the library. Quite a big task. We've got 2 major sites, 1,500 staff. In terms of the kind of things that I look after, I'm responsible for, I guess, directly over 600 staff in technology, estates, so our buildings, infrastructure, our marketing departments, our social media, our fundraising, which we're really reliant on, security, and HR, which is actually where my background has really been. And my adventure, I guess, or my journey getting to this role has been quite an adventure, and I just wanted to share a little bit about that with you, especially if you're considering a career in the library, heritage or cultural sector. I joined the British Library during the global pandemic, so it was a very challenging time for everybody, but for me it was a real chance to make a difference in my role as Director of People. And what that meant was really championing mental health, well-being, diversity, and everything that relates to staff. And it was a really tough time. And more recently, I've been promoted into the role of Chief Operating Officer. And I guess that kind of shows actually the sorts of roles that you get at a library can be so broad. And there are so many opportunities to grow and advance, not just in the sector, but in the library itself. And as Laura mentioned before, joining the British Library, I had an incredible experience working for Sony. My team were based out of Japan. I commuted. I do have 2 young children. It can be done. And for 6 years, I got to work with amazing people from all over the world, helping shape the future of talent and innovation at Sony. And that was across music, movies, and other areas of PlayStation, etc. But my story isn't just about work, and I think that's quite key for this group as well. I'm also deeply passionate about giving back to society and protecting our planet. And as a trustee, which is something anyone can look at of any age, but as a trustee, a non-paid role, I get to combine my love for people and nature and work with Ball Place, which is based down in Sevenoaks in Kent, working on education and environment projects that really make a difference. So that's a bit about me. I'm here really to help you see the passion, dedication, the courage that you need, but that you probably have as well to make a positive impact, regardless of the sort of role that you go into. But the library and heritage sector in particular needs really bright, enthusiastic minds like yours to really evolve and inspire future generations. So yeah, I'm looking forward to your questions towards the end, but I'll hand over to Lindsay now for her intro.
Great, thanks, Jazz. I've just come back from Japan on holiday, so I've got an idea of your former commute. But yes, I'm Lindsay Douglas. I also live in Kent and are based in St Pancras. I've been lucky enough to have two different types of careers in the creative sector. So went to university and studied something really niche. I studied paleontology, so everyone says, oh, like Ross from Friends. And when I graduated, I volunteered and then had various contracts at the Natural History Museum, going down a kind of collections management route. I really wanted to work with collections. But a couple of years into that, I was involved with a volunteering program where we were working with lots of different volunteers for 10 weeks at a time. And I got to train and teach them. So I realized that I wanted to work with people and not the objects, as interesting as they are. So from there, I did what I could to change careers. I studied for a HR qualification. And then when my contract was up at the Natural History Museum, I volunteered at Royal Museums Greenwich in their HR team. And then luckily enough, I was there 1 month when a paid role came up, and then managed to move up through the ranks there, mainly within L&D, which is learning and development. And then after a couple of years there, moved within the sector again. So Core Leadership, which is a training program for the sector. And then I went to the V&A where I started to look after early careers in particular, rather than general L&D, and fell in love with early careers. And then here I am at the British Library.
Amazing. Thanks both for going into a little bit more detail. That's really, really helpful. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about creative access before handing back to Lindsay to talk about these amazing opportunities. But many of the audience here today will be familiar with us already, but if you're new to our community, and we are Creative Access, and we're a social enterprise that supports those from underrepresented backgrounds to flourish in the creative industries, and we support individuals via internships and jobs, mentoring programs, application guidance, and long-term career support. You can see a picture there of our 10-year anniversary a couple of years ago, and all of our lovely alumni. And today's session really, there'll be the opportunity to learn more about the British Library, which is used by apparently almost 16,000 students, scholars and members of the public every day, which is huge. We'll be kind of finding out more about the British Library training placement and how to apply and make your application stand out, along with top tips, advice and guidance, and the eligibility criteria for the role. So specifically, you know, we're really, really proud to partner with the British Library again this year. This isn't the first time we've done this. It's trialled and tested, and you'll be in very safe hands. And because of that, we have some lovely feedback from past trainees. So Alice, who was a past trainee on the programme, has said her favourite aspect of the traineeship was being able to pick the brains of all the incredibly intelligent and friendly staff. And this opportunity really does provide an opportunity to connect and learn from a whole range of professionals working in the heritage, cultural and library sector. We've got another lovely feedback quote here from Nandita, who again is a former British Library trainee, and she speaks about the experience as being truly eye-opening. She had the opportunity to do engaging networking sessions, shadowing opportunities and field trips to libraries across the country, and really gained a comprehensive understanding of the library beyond its shelves and archives. And during her time there, she learned a plethora of transferable skills, particularly in communication, teamwork and project management. And I love this last point in terms of the added perk of free access to the library's exhibits made the experience even more enriching. So yeah, you you a real lovely flavour of the experience. And she's currently working as a paid social executive at Publicis Media, so still working in the creative industries, which is fantastic to see. So kind of a bit more context on the British Library training placements. If you're curious about a career in the library and creative sector, the British Library can help to start your career story with this training placement. So throughout these placements, you'll develop skills in librarianship, hosting events, engaging with audiences, supporting projects, and many more exciting tasks. And successful trainees will also gain an insight into the whole breadth of career pathways at the British Library and beyond. And just to highlight, there are 5 opportunities available and attached to this current vacancy. And now I'm going to hand over to Lindsay to kind of talk about more of the specifics and what you can expect from the programme.
Thanks, Laura. So this programme has been designed, and at its heart, it's a taster of the sector, and in particular, working within a library. I think we're very passionate about all of the different roles that you can gain within a library, from, I know we've been talking about HR, but from HR to working with our international team, to cataloguing with librarians, to working in estates, to marketing. The possibilities are almost, I would say, endless in terms of career paths. And that's something that we've taken into account when designing this. So it's designed to be kind of the first step into the sector, but also the world of work. So there'll be some time with myself to kind of give you the tools that you need, and then go on to various different activities. So you won't be with one department the whole time. The idea is to try everything and get an idea of what interests you the most, and an idea of what your strengths are and your interests are. So each trainee will have their own timetable, which includes careers talks, shadowing, solo projects. We had visits to other organisations last year, which we're going to bring back. So last year we went to the Bodleian, which was really great, Bodleian Library in Oxford, which was really great. And I think it's designed so, you know, you get to experience as much as possible. We have a focus this year, which is spending time with teams that work with our users. So for us, in the library sector, users are anyone that engages with the library, for example, coming in to research using our collections, or perhaps they're a member of our local community who kind of engage with us. We have a community hub, for example, so users from our local community come in for anything from a cup of tea to a careers workshop. So teams offering activities this year include our international team, who build our profile internationally. But we've also got learning, who run interactive programs. So they have a schools program, for example. We also have our business and intellectual property centre, which we call BIP for short, on board as well. And their users are entrepreneurs who are setting up their own business and want guidance, or perhaps small business who want guidance, in particular in terms of patents and things like that. Our users can even include other libraries, because we're a national library and we engage and advise all across the UK. So there's a huge range of things that the trainee can expect. We concentrate our activities between 10 and 4 each day, but understand people have various different commitments. So if someone does have a different timetable, they can let us know and we can adjust as much as possible. But most of the activities are kind of programmed at this point to take part sort of during 10 to 4, and we will work Monday from Friday together. Next slide, please, Laura. So we are looking for people who are very much really keen to learn about a career in the British Library, the library sector, or wider creative sector, as it's one of the reasons that we created this placement. But in particular, we're not looking for anybody who has prior experience. We're looking for people who kind of match our values, and I'll go into that a little bit more when we talk about Q&A. But this sort of translates as being interested in working in the heritage sector, working with our users. So one of our values, for example, is putting our users first. Obviously people who are keen to learn because it's a learning program. And then if you are confident using a computer, I think that'll be really useful for you as part of the program. And we use Microsoft Office Suite here. So if you're happy to spend time learning that, that's great as well. Next slide, please, Laura. The next steps afterwards. So what we're hoping is that the trainees who join us for 5 weeks fall in love with the library and the wider sector, and they'll be keen to apply for future roles with us. We will be recruiting for some apprenticeships later this summer, so in September, and they will be in the teams we've listed on the slide below. So learning, our community team, the international office, and also the Business and Intellectual Property Centre, BIPC, that I mentioned earlier. So they'll be all offering a business admin apprenticeship, and the trainees, having learned a little bit more about the library, might be keen to apply for those. Past trainees have gone onto a really wide range of things within the sector. So we heard from Alice and Nandita, but we've also had trainees go on to be a library assistant at their university library. We've also had a trainee who was working freelance before joining, and I believe she's continued that, but she's also set up her own community library in collaboration with the Africa Centre. And I really love that story because she's taken her learning and made it work for a project that she was really passionate about before starting the traineeship.
Amazing, and so lovely to hear those examples. Thanks for sharing, Lindsay. Now we're going to kind of cover how to make your application stand out. So the British Library are working with Creative Access on the kind of recruitment for these roles. And in doing so, when you apply, please do tell us your interest in the British Library and what they do. Have a look on their website, do some research, tell us about when you visited or your aspirations for visiting, and what sort of things they might have going on their websites that you can access. We'd love to hear why you're interested in working in the heritage, cultural and library sector specifically. Why now? And why in the future? What appeals to you about that? And what impact would you like to make? Also, please do demonstrate your understanding of how the British Library engages with a variety of users with its work. So we mentioned some stats earlier, maybe include them in your application, but also do a bit more research on how different people are accessing the British Library. And please do make sure to include any relevant experience on your CV, even if it's unpaid work, personal projects you're working on in your spare time, or voluntary responsibilities. Anything that's relevant, we'd love to hear, because that all supports a really strong application. In terms of top tips for applying, I think something that really stands out when we receive applications is when someone's shown the alignment with the opportunity and their personal goals. And what I mean by that is, how does the specific traineeship or the British Library, along with the wider kind of heritage, cultural and library sector, align with your personal career goals and aspirations? If you can join those two and connect the dots, it really makes for a really strong application. And we also just love to hear genuine enthusiasm and the passion for the work that you would be doing. What appeals about the traineeship? What things are you really excited about? Are there things that Lindsay's mentioned today that you'd really like to get involved with and find out more about? Also great if you can showcase any relevant certifications or training, relevant, projects you've worked on at school, college, for instance, or mention work or voluntary experience, studies or personal projects that may provide transferable skills. Always good to highlight those transferable skills that may really support your application. I think it's important to highlight, however, this is an entry-level opportunity, so you won't be expected to have lots of experience. Just include what you have, make it shine, as we'd love to hear about it. And I think one thing that I would also really like to kind of point to and highlight is, do look at the start date for this opportunity and make sure that you can commit for that 5 weeks duration, because we really do want people that can make the most of this opportunity, and by doing so, be present in that. But as Lindsay says, there is some flexibility around that. So it's just about keeping the team informed about your availability. So now we've got a little bit of time to move to Q&A, and we had some amazing questions submitted in advance by everyone. So thank you if you submitted a question. I've got a whole list of questions that I'd like to ask both Jazz and Lindsay now. In addition, we will reserve a little bit of time at the end for some questions from the audience live today. So if you just click through to the Q&A section, just drop any questions that come up in there. If you're not sure, you don't have any questions, have a little peruse, and you can upvote just by clicking on the little thumbs up button, your favourites. So that bumps up the most interesting questions to the top. So yeah, please do share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, though, and move to a discussion with Jazz and Lindsay. So my first question to the panel is kind of really essentially, I want to start with your roles and what an average day looks like before kind of moving more on to the traineeship. So, what does the average day look like for you, Jazz?
Wow. Okay, so this week's been a bit difficult because we just got a new puppy. So actually, when I'm thinking about my home to work, I don't really know what I'm doing right now. But I mean, typically, I tend to be on site around 4 days a week. I travel in from Kent, as I mentioned, so I tend to do a school drop-off on my way in, get to my desk after a lovely train journey in St Pancras, and then I tend to just get ready and prepare for the start of the day. And typically our meetings start at 9:30, and we are very meeting heavy in the role that I do. So most of my day is spent in back-to-back meetings. What I like about being on site, I think, is that now we have an opportunity to do those in person rather than on Zoom and Teams, because you get a bit tired of that after a while, and I have to keep checking that everything's tidy as well around you. But it's great to have that connection with people, whether that's casually over a coffee or whether it's a more formal meeting. In terms of my job as Chief Operating Officer, I do tend to have a lot more structure. So I know that there's going to be a part of the month that's going to be really heavy with board papers and meetings about meetings. And then the rest of the time's really preparing for that, and often dealing with anything that randomly comes in. So I can't say that every day is the same. I'd say it's very much changed from my days at Sony and working in the tech industry to working in culture and heritage. I feel like I have got more of a work-life balance here, and often I'll go out after work with Lindsay and the team who I used to work closely with before as well. So yeah, it does vary. I don't know what time I'm going to necessarily get home, but I'm usually sitting at my desk by 9 planning how the rest of my day goes. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a picture for kind of what I get up to.
Now about you, Lindsay.
Yeah, so one of the great things about the library is we have flexi time. So as long as we're here between 10 and 4, we can kind of arrive early and leave a bit earlier, or arrive later and leave a bit later. So on the days when I'm during the office, so I'm typically in the office 2 days a week, but that will change during the traineeship. I'll be around a lot more so that I can support, because the traineeship will be taking part entirely on site, so I'll be around a bit more. Yeah, I kind of get in between 8:30 and 9, depending on trains, and kind of take it from there. An average day varies a lot. There are some meetings for me, but thankfully not as many for Jazz in her role. So I often meet with stakeholders across the library. So these are often colleagues who will be working on new projects with me. So for example, if we're looking, who are kind of interested in offering an apprenticeship but don't know much about it, or line managers who currently offer apprenticeships, perhaps they want a bit more guidance on how to support them. So that's often what my meetings are about. I also manage a small team. It's just got smaller because our apprentice has recently finished her contract, but I usually spend a lot of time with my team just talking through what we're working on. My role is kind of bringing in new initiatives, and my team members' role is looking after business as usual. So we do spend a lot of time sort of chatting about how the two things fit together. But my favorite days are when I'm focusing on one particular piece of work. So sometimes I write a proposal about our apprenticeship approach or suggesting a new program, just like getting my head down and focusing on something. I also get to visit colleagues in our Boston Spa site quite a lot. So I was up there last week, which is one of my favorite things. We've got a fantastic site quite near to York, so I get to go up there. So yeah, it can vary a lot, I think. But and that's something that the trainee will go through as well, because it's a nice varied program for them.
That's a lovely segue, actually, Lindsay. Another question that came up is kind of a better understanding of what the day-to-day tasks that the trainees will be doing.
Yeah, so each trainee will get their own bespoke timetable. So there might be some overlap. So for example, the first couple of days, they'll be spending time with me, learning about the library and a little bit about our strategy and context and getting health and safety sorted and all those exciting things. But usually the day may be broken down a little bit. So it might be a morning doing a work task, for example, with cataloguing, and then going to a careers talk in the afternoon, perhaps with someone from our international team and hearing about their career story. We're really trying to cover a wide remit of what we cover at the library. So I don't think it will be, there'll be very few days where you're just in one team for the whole day. It will be little bits of tasters everywhere, but enough time to kind of get stuck in. The trainees also have a project that will kind of work across the whole traineeship. So there'll be time to work on that throughout the week as well. So that will be on site as well, but a bit of time to yourself to kind of work on one piece of work. So projects that we're working on include projects with those teams, but there's also a project with early careers about supporting students from our virtual work experience program as well. So a bit of ownership, but also listening and learning.
Thank you. And I've got a question for you, Jazz, in terms of how does the British Library cater to different audiences and different users?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we have such an array of users, and our demographics range from families, young children, right the way to researchers, academics, people who are retiring that want to kind of come and spend time at the library as well. I oversee the marketing department, and actually there's a big part of work that we do there called audience segmentation, and that's when we really start to understand our users. And some people may have come across that in the work that they do, but it's really understanding whether that's from someone walking in a building to someone engaging with us online, to someone complaining about us, right? I mean, there's going to be a whole mix of people that are interacting with us day to day, including staff, and including those that are accessing web and other things online. So actually a big part of our role here is to make sure that we are using the right language, the right branding, the right context, make sure we're inclusive, and that we really understand different learning styles, as well as how people absorb and take in information. And that's part of our whole mix around being the British Library, right? Around making content accessible for everybody. We've still got a long way to go with that. Don't get me wrong. I think the whole world has, actually, to make sure that things are in an accessible way for people. But that we also then replicate, I guess, in the programs that Lindsay and the early careers team roll out, because it's about making sure that we create programs for everyone as well. So yeah, I think that's how we cater to different audiences. We do a lot of research into it, and we have to understand our audiences in order to be able to support them.
Super, that's really helpful. And in terms of like the company culture at the British Library, as a prospective applicant, how would you describe that to them? I don't know who wants to take that question.
There was one thing I was thinking of earlier, and it's about this project in particular, but we often do a call out for volunteers across the library to help us with careers fairs or hosting work experience students and offering their time for careers talks, for example, for this program. And we just get such an amazing response last year in particular when it was the pilot program. And there were some moments where that summed up the culture for me, especially when we had kind of like a celebration party at the end and people who were involved came along. So that's kind of my feeling of the culture. Lots of passionate people who are very interested in what they do, but also interested in what we each do across the organisation. But how about you, Jazz?
Yeah, I mean, we've got two different sites, right? So Boston Spa that Lindsay's mentioned and London, really different sites, really different demographics of people, really different job roles as well in a lot of sense. But actually, and so that does create different cultures. You know, there's probably a more vibrant younger culture in London, and in Boston Spa, you've got more the family kind of feel when you go there. Everybody knows everybody because of where it is. And I think that's fantastic when those two cultures kind of come together. And, you know, Lindsay and I work across both sites. And I think regardless of the site, the staff, the users, and even, you know, we came out of a cyber crisis, a cyber attack last year, even our staff and our users have been really kind of empathetic, have really been supportive, and it just really shows that there's a real love for the British Library as an institution. And just we can see that everywhere we look, there's a thirst for knowledge, there's a thirst for supporting and helping, and definitely comes across with our, whether it's our traineeships or our apprenticeship programs. There's a real love and passion for seeing people working within our sector. So yeah, it's a really exciting culture to be part of.
Amazing. Sounds like a really incredible place to work in terms of the company culture and all the various people that work there. One of the questions that's come in is kind of an interest in what are the different career pathways that are offered by the British Library. I guess you've got people working in different teams, people working at different levels of seniority, but I don't know who would like to take that question and kind of tempting an answer.
Yeah, maybe Lindsay wants to touch on the more early careers pathways, and I can maybe elaborate a bit on the wider ones.
Sounds good. So one of my the purposes of my role is to kind of create a joined up careers path so that there is something for everyone, specifically if they're just starting out. So that ranges all the way from work experience to the traineeship to apprenticeships, and then first what we call D or C grade role at the library. So the next step after the traineeship would be applying for one of our apprenticeships. I mean, I think the trainees last year also applied for D level roles, which is our usual entry level roles in the library. But I would really recommend our apprenticeships because they kind of build the foundation of all the skills that the trainees will kind of test out for themselves. But the apprenticeships is kind of more of a long-term skills building. The pathway can really be adapted to each apprentice's interest and team. So I'm just thinking about our recent apprentices and what they've done. So we've had a business admin apprentice, for example, who was based in the publishing team, and they went on to once their contract with the apprenticeship was finished, there was a vacancy that came up in their team. So now they're a publishing assistant, which I think is a great example. Oh, sorry, just one moment. Someone's just coming to the office.
I'll pick up. I knew this might happen. Yeah. Oh, sorry, carry on, Lindsay.
Yeah, all clear now. So we've also had an apprentice who graduated from our customer service apprenticeship, and they were interested in moving into a library specific role, and they were successful in achieving a place on our library information archive services apprenticeship. And I would say that yes, they're going from an apprenticeship to apprenticeship. Well, one was a level 2, which is kind of the qualification there sort of matches A levels GCSE, although the work it is kind of professional level work. That's just the level of the qualification that comes with it. And then they kind of went up to a level 3, which is the next step on. And it also gave them the opportunity to really specialize. So that apprenticeship is a rotational one in 3 different departments. So they've just spent time with our research services team working out about our users and how they use the library. And now they're going on to learn about being a reference librarian. So it's a really good pathway, and the first apprenticeship gave them the skills they needed in the interview for the Library Information Archive Services apprenticeship. Such a mouthful, I might just call it LIAS from now on, because that was quite a competitive recruitment round. We had about 500 people apply for that particular apprenticeship, so I would say the first apprenticeship they did sort of gave them the skills to be one of those apprentices. But yeah, there's a lot of options with early careers. But Jazz, how about?
Yeah, I guess, what I see working with the different varied departments is that they want to have apprentices. We want apprentices or trainees to succeed in our organisation, to go on to apprenticeships, to then go on to secure permanent positions here. And so that is our ultimate goal. If you're investing in people, you want to retain them, whether that's within the library or within the sector. So, whether you stay with us or you go to someone else in the cultural heritage sector, it's still feeding the sector, which is what that's our ambition. In terms of career pathways, I mean, if I look at just, Lindsay's team, the amount of promotions and progression and creating roles in the department, and we have this across the library because we're always doing new, different things. It's quite a lively place for innovation and just creating opportunities, which is unusual, actually, if I'm honest with you, having worked in big corporates to then working here, where actually we are creating opportunities for people. And the progression can be whatever you really want it to be. And the career path can be what you want it to be. There will always be roles where you need technical expertise, in certain positions there will be. But I'd say actually from a recruitment process perspective, those roles that don't necessarily need a technical qualification or a technical accreditation of some sort, it's much more focused on your kind of values, your culture fit, how you've kind of adapted to situations, etc. So I'd say we don't have stringent career pathways at the library. If anything, there's something called a squiggly career, and mine's been very squiggly. And if you get the opportunity to do different things, that can only enhance your skill set. And I think we encourage that actually within the library.
Brilliant. Thank you both for answering that. So we've got quite a lot of questions from the audience coming in. So I'm going to give them a turn. I'm afraid we won't be able to answer everyone's questions. There's quite a lot in kind of over 30 in the Q&A section. So please do upvote your favourites, and I'll look out for the most popular ones. We've got some kind of practical questions coming in just around the bursary and how that works. So yeah, Lindsay, are you able to take that?
Yeah, so we wanted to provide a bursary to make this opportunity accessible for everyone, and part of that is that it will be paid, half of it will be paid, well, 2 weeks of it will be paid up front. So we kind of have divided it into 2-week chunks. So prior to the first week, the trainee will get their first 2 weeks worth of bursary. And then after week 1, they'll get the next 2 weeks, so that there's always 1 week in advance, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does, because Laura, you look a little, I don't know if I'm explaining it right. But basically it's 2 weeks in a week in it's 2 weeks at a time, 1 week in advance. Which is something we set up with our finance department. Yeah.
I think it's brilliant you pay up front. Don't worry, I was just reading the Q&A section. Working out which question to answer next. To ask next. But yeah, I think that's brilliant that you're in a position to pay up front. I think that shows a commitment to supporting entry-level talent at the organisation. So yeah, thanks for sharing those details. I'm sure it'll be reassuring to people who are applying. We had a few questions submitted in advance, and it's also come up in the chat again today, just around career changes and whether they'd be eligible to apply to this programme.
I would say the thing to really look at is whether they would learn from this opportunity. So it might be, so this opportunity is very much for someone who hasn't experienced the world of work, perhaps not including like retail and customer service, but the sort of like a library type environment. So I think if you've experienced an admin role before, or you've had experience of the sector, perhaps think about what you'd get from it. I would say career changes are welcome, but as long as they know that they'd get something that's really beneficial to them out of it. Maybe for career changes, going straight into the apprenticeship might be more of interest and be of a suitable level. So our apprenticeships are open to any age, and have attracted a lot of career changes in the past. And I think that might be a more beneficial route for a career changer, just because they've got experience to draw on in the interview already. I think this traineeship is for someone who's looking to get that first experience and get kind of a start of something to kind of put on their CV.
Thank you for answering that. And I think if you are a career changer interested in this opportunity, don't hide away from that, and explain in your application, and highlight what you would be looking to benefit from the opportunity, so we can bear that in mind and see whether it is something that that would fit. Kind of, we had a few questions in advance, and it's come up again in terms of, we've touched on it already, but I think good to revisit. Lindsay, what candidates are you looking for in what qualities are you looking for in a candidate?
Yeah, I do think it's a good question. So yes, we've got our criteria on the advert, and I would say if you're thinking of applying, go back and having a look at that and seeing if that's something that speaks to you. I think, as I said before, it's someone that kind of matches our values. So I've got our values on my other screen. So that's putting users at the heart of everything we do. So people that are happy to support others, and perhaps have that little aspect of customer service. The other values are listen, innovate, and adapt to a changing world. So have that little bit of enthusiasm for change, and learning as that change happens, embracing equality, fairness, and diversity. So, treating each other with respect, and compassion, which actually is the next value. And then acting with openness and honesty. So, communicating with us what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, what you're interested in. And collaboration is a big one for us. So we like to say we do more than we could together than by ourselves. So someone who is interested in collaborating. But I would say have a look at the criteria. And this actually might go on to another question that's coming up later about the application. But have a look at the criteria we've kind of listed, and have a think about examples that you can bring to this. It will make it a lot easier for Creative Access team and us when we go through and we see something that kind of matches each and every criteria. That's always kind of our top tip for applying to a role. So yeah, I would say have a look at our values, let us know about yours. That would be really interesting. Let us know about why you're interested in the British Library. Have you been to the library before? If not the British Library, then your local library, or are you just really passionate about research? Like one of our apprentices, for example, describes themselves as a research geek, and that's something that I really, really loved when they included that in their interview. So just show us your kind of passion.
That's wonderful, and some absolute gems of advice there. If you've hung on till the end of this webinar, in terms of including all of those wonderful things in your application, we are kind of on our final minutes of the webinar. So I'm just going to briefly touch on the application process before flipping to the panel for one final question about the favourite aspect of their role. But firstly, In terms of the application process, you'll be applying with a CV and cover letter via the Creative Access website, and we will then review all of those applications by hand and put forward kind of a smaller number to a long listing session. So that is an opportunity, if you progress to the next stage, to share your interest, your motivation in this specific opportunity. And then from that point forward, we will decide whether to progress you onto the British Library, who will then take the baton from that point forward and conduct interviews, and then select 5 successful candidates, and they will join our Springboard programme to support their training placement, and that involves an induction and peer networking and masterclasses and so on. So that's the kind of process to expect. And flipping back to the panel, my final closing question is just to finish on, what is the favourite part of your job and working at the British Library? Who would like to go first?
Oh, I'll go first. Mine's a strange one. It's actually walking into the office here at St Pancras in the morning, standing on a balcony. So if you've ever visited or you haven't, please visit. Stand on a balcony and looking out those front doors at the queue that's formed outside at 9 AM, 9:30. And when the doors open, everyone running in to get their study space. And there's just this feeling of, this is why I'm here. This is to enable this to happen and to give people the space to think, to be themselves, to research, and to do all the things that they want to do. And it's just such a wonderful feeling to engage with so many different people, whether that's from a work perspective or a social perspective, internally and externally. There aren't many opportunities or many organisations where you get to do that. And so that's my favourite part about working here.
I'd say mine's similar. So often I'm either working from home or in the office, the people team office. But I really like going out to the public area to just perhaps get a coffee, or if I need to get something from the shop, it's really handy having a gift shop on site if you need to buy presents. But it's just, you get out and you see the architecture. So we've got the King's Library in the middle of this big open space. And then you get a little moment of, oh, I work here at the British Library, and I really like that. But I also like it during our apprentices and our trainees' first week, when I spend the time with them before they go off to do their placements, just getting to know them and just seeing their enthusiasm for the library. It's definitely been a highlight of the last year and a half I've been here.
Oh, that's so wonderful and lovely to hear. And the passion for your roles has shone throughout. So thank you, both Jazz and Lindsay, for being so generous with your insights, your advice and your guidance. I hope that has been super helpful to our audience today, whether you're interested in working in the heritage library sector and specifically interested in this opportunity, and or either of those. Thanks everyone in the audience for being for hanging on there, for asking questions both in advance and today. It's been lovely to hear from you. I'm sorry we didn't get through everything, but please do reach out via the info@creativeaccess.org.uk info box if you have more questions, and also to the team behind the scenes today in making today happen. So thank you, and yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks everyone. Best of luck if you decide to apply. Thank you. Bye bye.